And before we start we're continuing our series Upside Down. Before we start this, as you guys probably already know, we are in election week. Tuesday's election day. You guys already know that. Some of you, like me, are kind of ready for it to pass, right, to be over. And we did a whole sermon series on this, so some of you, it might be a good idea to go back and listen to that, called, what was that sermon series called? How am I forgetting? Not in it to win it, yeah. I preached it, and I completely forgot the sermon series. But one thing I want to do before we talk today and before we get ready for everything, I want to pray over what's about to happen this week. I am not going to pray for a candidate to win. I'm not going to pray for a party to win. One thing I want to remind you of is during this time, your candidate may win, your candidate may not win. Either way, our allegiance should not be to any other kingdom but the kingdom of God. And God is not dependent on who wins on Tuesday. I want to remind you of that. Some of us, we are fearful or angry or whatever else, and no matter what happens on Tuesday, we are called to the mission that God has given us. So I want to take some time as we get ready, and I also want to remind you, it is a privilege and an honor that we have to vote and to have this process. So I hope you respect that privilege. I hope you vote with your God-given conscience, whatever that leads you to do. But I want to take a moment to just remind ourselves to take some time to pray over what's about to happen this week. And then next week, just so you know, we are going to pray for whoever won. Whether it's a candidate you liked or not, we're going to pray not in celebration and not in lament. We're going to pray that God guides them to lead this country well for the next 4 years. So I want to take a second. I'm going to give you just a couple seconds just to kind of settle your hearts and just be in God's presence. And then I'm going to lead us in prayer about this upcoming week. So take a couple moments here. Dear God, we thank you for being the God that knows what's already happening, knows what's going to happen, the God that is the King that is reigning. And dear God, I pray for this week as we have the privilege of another election night and electing a new president, that you remind us that it is a right that we have and it is a privilege that we have, and we should vote with our God-given conscience, but remind us that no matter what happens, that you are the God who already knows what's going to happen. You are the God who is already reigning. You are the God who has already won. So God, I pray that you just remind us this week. I pray that you help us to model the way we should be responding and participating when it comes to politics during this week. During this hard week where some people are going to be very upset, some people won't. I pray that you just help us as your followers to represent you well, the King that is reigning, during this process. In your son's name, amen. So I have learned that I am a guy who enjoys recognition, okay? Some of you are like not center of attention people. It's not me. I kind of don't mind being the center of attention at times. I've learned that. I used to be a lot worse with this when I got younger, but as I've grown and matured, I've started to learn like kind of where that comes from. Some of that's insecurity, some of that, you kind of learn that as you grow older. But I was thinking this week about the times I've craved and sought after recognition, and here's some times I thought of. I used to play in a band in high school and college, but I played drums. Problem when you play drums is you're in the back. People can't see you that well. When our drums are set up right, like they're in darkness, basically. You don't even always know who it is. And so what I would do when we would play in shows is I would move around as much as I can. My neck would always hurt. Sometimes I would stand on the seat of the drum, like the throne, and like put my hands up to like, hey, look at me, because I needed attention. And sometimes I would even come up front when I wasn't playing parts to like sing parts because I needed to be up front. And I think my band hated that I did all that stuff. When I first got married, I would do chores, and I would make sure Erica knew the chores I did. She'd come home from work and be like, hey, just so you know, don't worry about the dishes tonight, girl, because I got it, okay? Hey, laundry, that's done. And I always acted like it was like extra credit for me to do it, which it goes back to like maybe some misogyny in me where it's like, it's extra credit when I do it. This is kind of your job, right? I should be. That she would remind me like, this isn't extra credit. This is your job too. It's like, oh yeah, I guess I don't need recognition for this. And then one time when I was getting my pastor's license, I was you have to go to this big weekend away with other pastors who were also looking to get their license, and it's a big assessment weekend. And at one point they were like, all right, stand up if you like the Ravens, whatever people would stand up. And one of those kind of like youth group type games. And at one point, they said, hey, stand up if you like being the center of attention. And I was the only person that stood up. But it was okay because I liked it. I was like, hey, everyone's looking at me, the only guy who's up, right? I'm a guy who likes recognition at times. Now, you may not be like me, where you enjoy being the center of attention. In fact, you may hate being the center of attention at times. But whether you like being the center of attention or you avoid it at all costs, here's what I do know. All of us enjoy some kind of recognition. Might not be in a large scale, but we enjoy some kind of recognition from somebody, whether it's your boss, whether it's people from your church, whether it's your friends, whether it's your spouse, whether it's your family. We enjoy recognition, and all of us enjoy being appreciated. And also, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with wanting to be appreciated when you do a good job. There's nothing wrong with wanting recognition. But when we like it too much, when we want it too much, when we need it too much, recognition and appreciation, that's where it actually starts to hurt ourselves. This entire series, we've been talking about Jesus' kingdom. And here's what we've been saying, that the kingdom of Jesus is an upside-down kingdom. It is an upside-down kingdom, that it feels opposite of how we want to live. It feels opposite of what we think we want. But when we start to participate and we learn that sin has clouded us so much that when we start to participate in Jesus' kingdom, we learn that's actually what our soul wants. It actually makes us who we want to be. And each week, we've been talking about a different kingdom ethic. And this week, the kingdom ethic we're talking about, you can write this down, is give away recognition. We are called to give away recognition. You may think, well, why we need to do that? If I've done something, why can't I be recognized? I like to be appreciated. I worked really hard to become who I am. How come people can't appreciate me? Hey, if I do a lot at the house, it's not a bad thing for my spouse or my family to appreciate me, right? It's not a bad thing for my boss to appreciate me. Why do we need to give away recognition? Here's why Jesus calls us to give away recognition, and here is why giving away recognition is good for you to do. When you crave recognition, when you crave that, we begin to find our value and our worth in our identity. And it's dangerous. All of us have identity we're trying to fight, whether it's your work identity, your home identity, your church identity. We're in an age of individualism. In the age of individualism, there's a heightened sense of identity. Your identity, who you are, or who you feel like you are, that is what's most important. See, back during traditional cultures, they were more communal. And so that was your identity in the community. The identity you had was the role you played in your family or the role you played in your community. You would take your individual interest and you would use it for the betterment of the family or the community. You would practice self-denial for the sake of the community. That's what traditional cultures used to be. We don't see that as much anymore, do we? Instead of finding our identity outside of ourselves in the community, we search inside ourselves. It's not about self-denial anymore. It's about self-assertion. Who I am is the most important thing in this world. And all of us do this. All of us have an identity issue. It's not just the people here think, it's everyone. All of us have an identity issue. If we do not find our identity as a child of God first and foremost, we wrap ourselves up in identity that's temporary and that will never actually satisfy you. So what's the solution? If all of us have an identity issue and all of us at times wrap ourselves up in identity it's not going to satisfy us, what's the solution to this problem? Well, the solution, the antidote for individualism, is giving away recognition. It's not making it about us, but instead pushing all the recognition to the person who deserves it. Like how Psalms 115 says, it says this, not to us, Lord, not to us, but to your name be the glory. Not to us. It's not about us. It's not for us. But to you, God, goes all the glory. What does that word glory mean? Glory means recognition or admiration. And glory, and God is the only one who is worthy of our glory, and he's also the only one that can actually handle that glory. So what are you really gifted in? If you think about something that you're good at, you're talented in, what is something that you would say, maybe a couple things that you're really gifted in? Maybe you're really good at your job. You're really good at that. You do it well. You're good with money. You're good with sales. You're good as a boss, as a coworker, whatever it is. Maybe you're a great parent. Maybe you're a gifted athlete. You're academically smart, and you were the kid in school that I would get bad grade and hope it'd come down because everyone else did, and you were the one who ruined it for me. Maybe that's you, right? Maybe you're a natural leader. Maybe you're an artist. Maybe you're a musician. Maybe you're a good communicator. I want you to think right now, what's something that I'm really good at? And it's not you being cocky, it's you being confident. Yeah, I'm good at this. Everyone has something, one or two things you're very good at. Everyone has that. Here's why it's important to be aware of what that is. Here's why. Wherever you receive recognition becomes a temptation to make that a part of your identity. Whatever it is that you thought of that you're very good at, you probably got recognition for it, right? If you're good at an instrument, someone probably told you, hey, you're really good at that. If you're good at your job, your boss might have said, hey, you're great at this. Wherever you receive recognition becomes a temptation to make it a part of your identity. Why is this a problem? That recognition, admiration, because when it becomes a part of your identity, you will do whatever it takes to protect it. My wife and I, we have friends, we have actually like 3 or 4 friends that are social media influencers. I don't know if they make any money doing it, but they sure make it seem like they make some money. And they will post constantly online about like where they're traveling or what they're doing locally. And also, they're like, we have a couple friends that do this, and they've gotten so wrapped up in doing this and making a name for themselves. It's become their identity, their social media persona. And I think a lot of us do this with social media anyways, but we have a couple friends that it's all they do. They're posting constantly, they post certain ways, they're making reels a certain way. The hard part when your social media persona becomes your identity is you don't really know who you are anymore. You have this persona, it's not even really you, and you do that. And then all the people around you, all the family and friends and people close to you, they're not even, you can't even really be friends with them. They're just pawns for your social media persona. Like your kids, your friends, they're just a way to show who I am. It becomes their image. And it gets so exhausting that a lot of times those people have trouble keeping friends because a lot of people don't want to be pawns. And when you allow recognition and admiration to form your identity, what happens is you start to lose. What happens when you start to lose that recognition? What happens when you're not getting as much recognition anymore? What we all do, you start to feel like, I'm losing my identity, and I got to get it back. Because who am I if I'm not this? Who am I if I don't have this recognition? In Scripture, there are 2 examples of people who received recognition. The recognition went away. One responded well with it. One didn't respond well. 2 examples of this that we're going to talk about today. The first one is this. It's a story of King Saul. If you've read the Old Testament, you might know a little about King Saul. King Saul was the first king of Israel. Israel was God's chosen people. Israel was didn't have any kings because they believed that God was the king, right? What are they doing upstairs today? Jeez Louise. They are going nuts. You know why? There's so many kids up there. And I would like to say, if you would like to serve in kids ministry, you can control them a little bit more up. No, I was kidding. The nation of Israel was the only nation that didn't have a king. Right? Because God was their king. They had judges that ruled over it. And then they got to the point where they're like, well, we really want a king. And it's like, yeah, you don't need one. God is your king. But we want one. So they finally said, okay, if you want a king, we're going to give you a king. And that's where King Saul shows up. The Bible describes King Saul as tall, dark, and handsome. He's taller than everybody else. He said he was really handsome, and he is the first king of Israel. He's chosen by God to be the first king. And if you read the beginning of his story, he started as a great king. I mean, he was humble, obedient, courageous. He led successfully during war times for Israel. But then the Philistines show up, and they have this giant named Goliath. And people start to doubt Saul and doubt his leadership, and that's where we're going to pick up 1 Samuel chapter 17. It says this. Goliath stood and shouted to the ranks of Israel, "Why do you come out and line up for battle? Am I not a Philistine, and are you not the servants of Saul? Choose a man and have him come down to me. And if he is able to fight and kill me, we will become your subjects. But if I overcome him and kill him, you will become our subjects and serve us." Then the Philistines said, "This day I defy the armies of Israel. Give me a man and let us fight each other." On hearing the Philistines' words, Saul and the Israelites were dismayed and terrified. Saul doesn't know what to do. This giant showed up, and he doesn't know how to beat him, and he's won a lot of wars, but he doesn't know what to do with this. And if you know the story, eventually this shepherd boy named David shows up. He defeats Goliath. He wins this amazing battle and this amazing victory for the Israelites. Saul, being the leader, and does what a good leader should do. He allows David to do what he's good at in the army. Here's what it says in 18 verse 5. Whatever mission Saul sent him on, David was so successful that Saul gave him a high rank in the army. This pleased all the troops and Saul's officers as well. Saul's being a good leader here. I mean, he's brought him up because he's doing so well. I'm going to bring him up and bring so that way he's able to be promoted, right? Nation's killing it. Saul is a good king. But then look at this next verse, verse 6. When the men were returning home after David had killed the Philistine, the women came out from all the towns of Israel and met King Saul, singing and dancing with joyful songs with the timbrels and lyres. As they danced, here's the song they sang. You ready? Saul has slain his thousands, and David his tens of thousands. Just imagine you're Saul. You're the leader. You've been the tall, dark, handsome one this whole time. You're leading well, and this David shows up and beats his Goliath. Like, I'm going to put you in charge of stuff because you're doing well. We're going to do it together. Then was like, man, Saul, you're doing great. But David, he's awesome. Look how great David is. He's doing so great. And Saul, yeah, keep going, man. You got your thousands, but look at David, how awesome he is. There's an option here. Saul could say, you know what? It's all about the nation. And God's king anyway. So if we're successful, then we're going to do it together. I don't need the recognition because it's all about God anyway. So if David gets recognition, that's fine as long as we are led well. That's an option he could do. Or he could do this. Verse 8. Saul was very angry. This refrain displeased him greatly. They have credited David with tens of thousands, he thought. But me, only thousands. Probably like, I've done more than thousands. I've done 3,000. Like, what are you, only thousands? What more can he get but the kingdom? And from that time on, Saul kept a close eye on David. Other translations say he kept a jealous eye on David. This is a major turning point. Saul had an option. His recognition was gone. He could say, you know what? It's not about me anyways. I don't need the recognition. Or he could become so angry and do whatever he can to get that recognition back. Because who am I if I'm not the king of Israel? Who am I if David becomes king? I'm nobody. I need to do whatever it takes to get it back. And if you know the story of Saul, it doesn't end well. He tries to get that recognition and that identity back until eventually it kills him. That's one way you can go. When you start to lose that recognition, you can go this way. Way Saul, I'm going to get it back because I need it. Who am I without it? Or you can be like Joseph. Joseph started as the baby of the family. Joseph was the youngest of 12, and he was his father's favorite. In fact, his father loved Joseph so much that he gave him this nice special coat. You might know, like Joseph and the Technicolor Dreamcoat, right? It's a musical, I think that is out, right? This is Joseph. He gets his coat because he's so special and awesome, and the brothers are like, how come he gets the coat? He's the dad's favorite, right? And then Joseph has a dream. Here's what the dream is, Genesis 37, verse 5 through 8. Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him all the more. He said to them, listen to this dream I had. We were binding sheaves of grain out in the field, and when suddenly my sheaf rose up and stood upright, while your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed to it. His brothers said to him, do you intend to reign over us? Will you actually rule us? And they hated him all the more because his dream and what he had said. Listen, I'm an older brother in the room. If my youngest sibling gets a coat, I'm going to be mad. Like, how come you get a special coat? I don't get it. And then if my youngest sibling goes, by the way, God told me you're going to bow to me one day. Like, I'm special. I'm so special. Not only our Father, but the ultimate Father has a big plan for me. You're going to bow to me. I would be upset too, right? Like, that the brothers make it clear. This is bothering them. Like, he makes it clear. So you would think if Joseph, being the youngest one, kind of doesn't come across super humble at this point, but you would think at this point, okay, I get it. My brothers, they don't like when I tell them about my dreams. If I have another dream, I'm not going to tell them. Well, what happens? Verse 9. Then he had another dream, and he told it to his brothers. Listen, he said, and another dream. And this time the sun and moon and 11 stars were bowing down to me. This time it's not only you guys, like mom and dad are going to bow to me too. That's what he's saying. Like, not only the brothers are upset this time, the parents are upset. Joseph does not come across to me as a humble leader, does he? He comes across as a spoiled, entitled brother. Maybe this is me reading into it because I'm an older brother. This is how it feels for me. That's rubbing in his family's face. Joseph's brothers get so upset about it, they say, no, we're going to kill him. And then they decide, no, we're not going to kill him. We're just going to sell him off into slavery to Egypt. And we're going to take his coat, that coat that he's so special, he thinks he's great. We're going to dip it in blood and give it back to dad to say, hey, he died. Look, the coat that you gave him, the special coat you gave him, he's dead now. And then, if you know the story of Joseph, it only gets worse. He goes to Egypt, he rises to power, but eventually it's taken away when he's falsely accused by Pharaoh's wife after he refused to sleep with Pharaoh's wife. Pharaoh's wife said, hey, I want trying to get him to sleep with it, and he doesn't do it. And then she says, all right, fine, you're not going to do it. I'm just going to tell everyone you did it anyways. He's thrown in prison. While he's in prison, he helps interpret other dreams because he knows how to do that. The dream of a cupbearer and of a baker. The cupbearer gets restored after the dream. The baker gets, let's say, fired. Really, he got killed. And the cupbearer completely forgets about Joseph. He gets restored. He doesn't say anything about Joseph. Joseph continues to rot in prison. At this point, Joseph has no recognition. Joseph has no credit. He has no glory. He has no admiration. He's forgotten and rotting in a prison cell until eventually Pharaoh has a dream. The cupbearer remembers Joseph. Joseph interprets the dream. And because of Joseph's interpretation of the dream, he tells them, hey, there's going to be a famine. We need to prepare for this famine that's coming. Egypt prepares for this famine. Eventually, the famine happens, but Egypt's ready because of Joseph's leadership. It got to a point where everyone around them needed help, so they decided to come up, including Joseph's brothers. Joseph's brothers show up because they need help. There's a famine happening, but Egypt has made sure that they were ready for things. So Joseph's brothers come. Here's what it says in Genesis 42, verse 6. Now Joseph was the governor of the land, the person who sold grain to all its people. So when Joseph's brothers arrived, they bowed down to him with their face to the ground. The dream had come true. At this point, if you're Joseph, you know what you can do? Told you. I told you would do it. You thought it wasn't going to happen. You tried to sell me. I told you that was going to happen. I was the special one. God called me. He could do that. But instead, he doesn't. He doesn't act entitled. He actually doesn't even tell his brothers yet what happens. After a time period, he eventually tells his brothers, here's what it says. It's going to be down to chapter 45. Then Joseph could no longer control himself before all his attendants, and he cried out, have everyone leave my presence. So there was no one with Joseph when he made himself known to his brothers. And he wept so loudly that the Egyptians heard him, and Pharaoh's household heard about it. Joseph said to his brothers, I am Joseph. Is my father still living? But his brothers were not able to answer him because they were terrified at his presence. Why would he be terrified? Because they tried to kill him, and now all of a sudden he is ruling. Does this feel like the same Joseph to you? Does this feel like the entitled Joseph? Not to me. This feels like a Joseph that's gone through a lot of things and made him mature. Verse 4. Then Joseph said to his brothers, come close to me. When they had done so, he said, I am your brother Joseph, the one you sold into Egypt. And now do not be distressed. Do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. For 2 years now, there has been a famine in the land. For the next 5, there will be no plowing and reaping. But God sent me ahead of you to persevere you to a remnant on earth and to save your lives by a great deliverance. Joseph didn't have to act this way. Joseph could have used the opportunity to repay his brothers with evil, because that's what they did to him. But instead, Joseph remembers his identity, not as Pharaoh's right-hand man, not as a brother, not as a son. He remembers his identity as a servant of God. And this was the plan. God sent me here to do exactly what's happening here. Eventually, their father dies, and Joseph's brothers in Genesis says they're terrified again because they were worried, oh, now that he's dead, maybe Joseph will now get his revenge. And so they go to Joseph, they beg him to please don't get any revenge. And here's how Joseph replies. But Joseph said to them, don't be afraid. Am I in the place of God? You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. See, when Joseph started, he had a great coat, but no character. And now here he is. His coat is long gone, but here he has his character. He gave the glory to the one it belonged to. And he was only able to do that because he did not find his identity in anything else but as a servant of God. So for you, here's what I want to remind you of. You probably already know this, but I want to remind you. You will lose recognition. Whatever it is you're good at, one day you're going to lose that recognition. One day people are going to stop talking about how great you are at that. One day people are not going to bring it up as much. It doesn't matter how good you are at your role. It doesn't matter how good you are in your identity. At some point, you will lose that recognition. Your identity at work, eventually people aren't going to talk about how good you are at work anymore. In fact, they might start blaming you for some of the things that are going wrong, even though it's not your fault. Your identity as a parent, eventually, your kids aren't going to need you anymore. And they're going to be gone. And all of a sudden, you're like, well, now what do I do? Whatever you're really talented in, eventually people aren't going to celebrate that anymore. I was thinking this week of Tom Brady. He won 7 Super Bowls, I think, 6 or 7, way too many, in my opinion. Anyways, he won too many. Had to cheat to get some of them. That's fine. People recognize him as the best quarterback ever. And then you know what happened? He decided to become a commentator. The first week, everyone said, he's the worst commentator I've ever seen in his life. If Tom Brady, the best quarterback ever, is going to lose recognition, you're going to lose recognition one day, right? We all do. It happens to all of us. The glory you may be receiving now, that glory will eventually fade. When that happens, when you lose that recognition, you have a choice on what you can do next. Here's your choice. You can try to get it back, or you can give it away. It's going to happen to each one of us. That glory recognition is going to go away, and your choice is you can try to get it back, or you can give it away. You could be like Saul. You know what? I need to get it back, whatever it takes, because who am I if I don't have this? I need to get it back no matter what. If I don't have this recognition, if I don't have this glory, what's my purpose? And if that's your choice, you will fight and fight and fight to get it back, and you will learn that it will never actually satisfy you. You'll never actually feel better. And you'll be fighting for the rest of your life for a glory that will not ever satisfy you, and that's temporary. Or you can choose to give it away. You know what? I don't need it. Because it's not about me. It was never about me. And yeah, it was great when I got it. I kind of like that recognition, I'm going to be honest. But now that it's gone, it's not about me. It's about who I serve. My identity is found in Christ alone. And so when it goes away, this is an opportunity for me to enter into my real identity. When it goes away, this is an opportunity for me to enter into an identity that actually helps me be satisfied. Maybe like you, or maybe like Joseph, you lost a coat. At some point you had that coat of recognition and it was shown. Maybe that was you. You lost the recognition, you lost that glory. What is God trying to show you about your character by allowing you to lose that coat? For me, you know what I found myself praying a lot? We had our men's night last night. I said this last night. Here's what my prayer normally sounds like, and it might be similar to yours. My prayer is normally this: God, here's what I want, and God, get me out of this. That's only my prayer. God, here's what I want. I would really like this and this and this. I think it'd be good for me. I'll glorify you a little bit, and I want this. And also, I don't like this, so can you get me out of this? And you know what God says a lot? Nope. No to both. No, I don't want you to have that, because if I give you that, that's going to be a barrier to the person I want you to become, so I'm not going to give you that. And I'm not going to get you out of this, because actually I'm forming you right now with what you're in. And it might not feel like it. It might feel like there's no light at the end of the tunnel, but I'm forming you with what you're going through right now. No, I'm not going to do that. Jesus invites us into his upside-down kingdom, that we are constantly practicing giving away recognition, so that when the recognition is gone, and when people stop recognizing it, it's not a hard choice. Just give it away. Jesus' disciples had the exact same temptation. If you read the book, any of the Gospels, but especially in the book of Mark, it happens over and over where they want this recognition. They know they're not like Jesus. They know they're not the Messiah. But they're thinking, you know what? We're the 12, though. We're right there below. In fact, Mark says this. Mark chapter 9 says, they came to Capernaum. When he was in the house, he asked them, hey, what were you arguing about on the road? If you're a parent in the room, you probably heard kids arguing. You know what they're saying, but you're like, hey, what are you guys saying back there? Just to see what they say. Jesus goes, hey, what were you arguing about on the road? But they kept quiet because on the way they had argued about who was the greatest. Like, no, I'm better, John. No, I'm Peter, I'm better. And Jesus is like, hey, what are you arguing about? Oh, nothing, Jesus. You didn't hear anything. Jesus then, it tells us in Mark, he tells them for a second time, hey, by the way, I'm going to die, but I'm going to come back 3 days later. They're going to call it Easter later on. It's going to be awesome. They don't understand what's happening. They were too busy arguing about who was the greatest to even understand what Jesus was saying. And they just don't get it. Then it says this in verse 35. Sitting down, Jesus called the 12 and said, anyone who wants to be first must be the very last and servant to all. Skip to Mark chapter 10. Jesus tells them for the third time, by the way, I'm going to remind you for the third time, I'm going to die, but 3 days later I will be back, and I'm going to prove who I am. Again, they don't fully understand it. Directly after that in Mark, they argue about their greatness again. That's what the disciples did. Verse 35. Then James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came to him. Teacher, they said, we want you to do for us whatever we ask. What do you want me to do for you? He asked. They replied, let us sit at your right and the other on the left in your glory. When the other disciples, when they hear what John, they just said, hey, when you get to heaven, we want to be right and left hand. The other disciples, it says, get so mad. You know why they're mad? They didn't ask. They're like, oh, now they're going to be able to be right and left when I could have. I asked first, just whoever asked first. They don't get it. They're still arguing about greatness. Jesus is saying, I'm going to die soon. They're like, yeah, but who's the greatest? Here's what Jesus says. You don't know what you're asking, Jesus said. Can you drink the cup I drink or be baptized with the baptism I am baptized with? Jesus continues with this. Says, we can, they answered. They still don't get it. Jesus said, you will drink the cup I drink and be baptized with the baptism I am baptized with. But to sit at my right or left is not for me to grant. These places belong to those for whom they have been prepared. Who are you to ask me to sit to the right and the left? You're missing the point. So Jesus makes the point crystal clear. Jesus called them together and said, you know that those who are regarded as rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great amongst you must become your servant. And whoever wants to be first must be slave of all. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. See, the way of being great in Jesus' kingdom is not about how much glory you receive, is not about the adoration you receive or the recognition that you get. The way to greatness in Jesus' upside-down kingdom is not by making it all about you, but it's about leveraging who you are and the gifts God has given you, the things that you are good at, for the sake of everyone around you. It doesn't matter what your position, your title, or your role is. It isn't about you. It is about passing off that recognition for the betterment of other people. So you may be thinking, well, Eric, what are you saying? Are you saying that I have to give up my rights and I have to give up my power? Are you saying I have to give my authority and my title, my privileges, my identity, the things I like, the glory I get, if it means serving other people? Is that really what you're telling me to do? And I would say, no. I'm not telling you to do that. Jesus is telling you to do that. Take it up with him. He's the one who said that. See, in Jesus' kingdom, the greatest is the least. In Jesus' kingdom, the greatest is the one who gives more away. In Jesus' kingdom, the greatest is the one who gives away recognition. The greatest is the one who doesn't make it all about them. In Jesus' kingdom, the greatest is the one who serves others no matter the cost to them. In Jesus' upside-down kingdom, it's about giving away recognition. So to close really quick, I'm going to give you 3 questions I want you to think about this week. 3 questions that I want you to wrestle with when it comes to giving away recognition. Here's the first one. Am I making anything too much about me? I'm making anything too much about me. It could be your successes. Am I making it too much about me? It can be your failures. Are you making it too much about me? It can be the pain and suffering you're going through, but you just are constantly a victim your entire life because you're making too much about you. Am I making anything too much about me? That'll let you know where it is that you're craving recognition that might be your identity. Second question. Can I celebrate others even when they have what I want? I really would like that. Can I celebrate it for them? Like, I would love to have a marriage like that. I would love to have kids like that. I would love to have the money they have. I love to have the success they've had in their job. Can you celebrate others when they have what I want? Because if you can't, that's telling you something. And then the last one. Am I building God's kingdom or my platform? That's really the ultimate question. Am I trying to receive all the glory for myself that I don't deserve and I can't handle it? Or am I making it all about God's kingdom? For me as a pastor, the history of this church, we planted this church over 6 years ago. And there's a long story of how we planted it, but we planted it with nothing, no money, no team, and we eventually were able to raise all the money to get a team together to launch well. And so in like church world and church planting world, when you're able to plant a church with that capacity, like people want to know how it worked, how it went. So when we first started the first couple of years, I was known as a church planter in our denomination, in our district, and things like that. And so I would get calls all the time to present what we did. I would go for a district assembly where a lot of people would be there, and I'd be on a panel to tell everyone, here's how we did it, and I would talk about planning. There's an organization called Passion for Planning. They would have me come twice a year to like give a seminar on church planning. And I kind of liked it. I was known as a church planner guy. Like, I was like, oh, I kind of like this, getting some credit and just people were celebrating me. I liked it. And then we got to the after 5-year mark, and people don't really consider me the church planner guy anymore. I don't get calls about that anymore. And then God has a weird way of doing this where it's like my brother, who's younger than me, is also a church planner. And so a lot of times after church, we'll talk about things. And for a while, I'd be like, hey, how many people did you have on Sunday? And every time, you know what I'm hoping? Be less than me. Be less than me. Because in my competitive nature of my brother, like, be less than me. And here's what I learned quickly. In this past year, I've really been learning this. Man, I've gone so long building my identity, not as a follower of Christ first, but as a pastor first. That's my identity. Who am I if this church isn't here? Who am I if I'm not a pastor? Who am I if I'm not the church planner guy? Who am I if my brother 30 minutes away is doing better than me? Who am I? And it's really quickly I started to learn, I'm not trying to build God's kingdom. I'm trying to build mine. So what do I need to do to push it away? To push away that recognition. And that's what I'm asking you. As we get ready to close out and we sing this last song, worship team start coming on up. I want to ask you this same exact question. Whatever recognition you get, that's going to go away. What can you do to give it away? Because it's not your identity. Your identity should not be built on anything but the fact that you are a son or daughter of the King who is reigning. So are you building God's kingdom or your own platform? Let's pray. Dear God, thank you that you are the God who has a plan and purpose for us. You are the God who gives us our identity. You are the God who invites us into this kingdom. And dear God, we right now repent. We apologize for the ways that we made it about ourselves. We made it about our glory, but our recognition. God, I pray that you help us when we go through seasons where we lose our coat like Joseph did, when we lose our recognition, to remind us this is an opportunity for us to give the credit right back to you. The only one who deserves it, the only one who can handle it, to you, the God who died for us, to you, the God who gives us a hope, to you, the God who gives us a purpose. God, I pray that no matter what we go through, when the recognition goes away, that we use that as an opportunity to remember who we really are, your son and daughters. God, help us to participate into that kingdom. In your son's name, amen. Let's stand and sing this closing song together.